Hare Krishna. Somebody can please lead the invocation prayers.
Yes, Prabhuji, I do. Om Jnanatimirudachy Jnananjalashalaakaya Satguru Anmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manovistyam Sthapanam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Katamayam Tatanti Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yudapadakamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavam Sa Sri Rupam Sagrajadam Saganaragnantavitam Sajivam Sattvaidam Savadudam Parijana Sakitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sargana Lalita Kavitam Cha Ye Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bando Jagatpati Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastude Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpatarusya Kripa Sindhu Evacha Paritanam Pavaneshu Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you all for coming. So first, I would apologize for last week. So last week, just before our session, I had written my Srimad Bhagavatam exam and I was so exhausted that became visible that in exhaustion, last week I forgot to let Mother Chandra Aunty present chapter 24 last section on the benefits of Rudra Gita as a second presenter to Shalini's presenter. So Mother Chandra Aunty was supposed to present, but I was just so exhausted that I completely forgot. I apologize. Sorry. So if Mother Chandra Aunty is ready to do that presentation today, we can hear from Mother Chandra Aunty on chapter 24, last section on Rudra Gita.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you, but no apology, Prabhuji. It's okay. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. All devotees, Dhananda Pranam. I seek permission and blessings from you all. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, Guru Parampara, Sri Radha and Krishna, seeking permission and able to speak. If there is any mistakes, please forgive me. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 24, verses 69 to 79. Title is How to Chant the Rudra Gita and Palastani. The contest says Prachitavarya had 10 sons known as Prachita who wanted to perform devotional austerities to please the Supreme Lord Krishna. Thus, by knowing this, the foremost demigod Lord Shiva voluntarily appeared to guide them. Thus, he taught them this Rudra Gita song. For this, Lord Shiva first offered prayers to the Supreme Lord, quadruplexic expansions, who are representations of consciousness, ego, intelligence, and mind. Then he offered the prayers to the deities of senses, physical elements of self-purification. Then he describes the beautiful form of the Lord. He also praises unalloyed devotees of the Lord and prays for their association, and concludes the prayer by describing the relationship between the Supreme Lord and the material creation. By chanting this Rudra Gita for 10,000 years underwater, Prajitas got the darshan of the Lord and blessings. Palastudi. By chanting and hearing the Rudra Gita, one becomes free from the bondage of karma. One becomes the devotee of the Lord. It pleases the Lord because it is the Lord's pleasure. Hearing and letting others hear is equal to perform austerities and gaining the knowledge of crossing the ocean of birth and death. It should be chanted regularly with attention, purity, and devotional intent, preferably in the morning with sincerity and surrender. This benefit householders, renunciates, and seekers alike. It leads the soul safely towards loving service of Supreme Personality of Godhead. Rudra Gita is a divine medicine when chanted with purity and devotion. Hare Krishna.
Very good. Thank you for quick refresher on the Rudra Gita.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Any questions, comments, realizations for Mother Chandranti? All right. Shivangi.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Is it possible to share the recording you played that day of somebody reciting the Rudra Gita?
Yeah, I'll share the class recording here in together with the context. That's better. So I've given that to Mother Chicha also. You can. I'll send that to you.
Yeah, you had mentioned it was somebody from Mayapur and they had.
He's Gauranga Darshan Das, and he's from, well, he's also a monk, so he keeps traveling. He's Gauranga Darshan Das. He's generally based in around Bombay, Eco Village, someplace. But of course, he also travels all over the world.
It was
Yeah, he is a prominent acharya. He also, Gauranga Darshan Das also conducts the Bhagavatam course, just as Mayapur Institute is one option to study Srimad Bhagavatam. Gauranga Darshan Das also has a institute in ISKCON. He's an ISKCON disciple, and he also teaches Bhagavatam as a degree course or as a postgraduate degree course. All right. So today we will start unit number 19 and we'll cover discussing Canto 4, Chapter 25. Let's see how much we cover. We'll cover about half or so. So as I already described at our last class, that this unit number 19 is titled King Puranjana, where Sri Narad Muni describes the story of Puranjana to Prachani Bharisat to tell the life story of Prachani Bharisat to Prachani Bharisat as an allegorical story. So you have seen the slides before. I will have it on the screen again. That this is the quick overview of Canto 4. And the last part highlighted in yellow is where we are right now. So we have discussed the standalone chapter 24 on Rudra Gita. And the last section, which is unit 19 on King Puranjana, and lead into the discussion to unit 20 about Narad Muni, Prachini Bharisat, and Prachetas. So unit 19 is titled King Puranjana, covers Canto 4, chapters 25 to 28, where Shri Narad Muni describes the story of Prachani Parisat to Prachani Parisat as an allegory by using Puranjana as an allegory. So all the characters in this unit 19, chapters 25 to 28 are fictional characters. The entire teachings are as an allegory. That chapter 25 starts with that once upon a time there was a king named Puranjana. And there are many more characters to represent something else. Later, Narad Muni goes on to describe that he told the story of Puranjana to Prachani Parisat to tell the life story of Prachani Parisat to Prachani Parisat. So last week we did read Canto 4, chapter 28, the last verse 65, where Srila Prabhupada explains that the path of Bhakti Yoga is the path of hearing directly about the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Says Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. But those who are not interested in hearing directly about the activities of the Lord, or those who cannot understand them, can very effectively hear such stories as this one narrated by Shri Narad Muni, the story of Puranjana narrated to Prachani Parisat to tell the life story of Prachani Parisat to Prachani Parisat. Unit 19 is titled King Puranjana, covering chapters 25 to 28. Chapter 25 is titled Descriptions of the Characteristics of King Puranjana. Is divided into 5 parts. Part 1, verses 1 to 8. Srila Narad Muni's mercy on Prachani Parisat. Part 2, verses 9 to 24. Sri Narad Muni narrates the story of Puranjana. Part 3, verses 25 to 44. A beautiful woman becomes Puranjana's queen. Part 4, verses 45 to 55. The gates and inhabitants of the city. Part 5, verses 56 to 62. Puranjana captivated by his wife. Everybody got the parts? All right. So part 1 is verses 1 to 8. Shri Narad Muni's mercy on Prachani Parisat. While the Prachetas were doing austerities and chanting Rudra Gita, standing in water for 10,000 years, their father, Prachani Parisat, was performing fruitive activities. So Srila Narad Muni decides to enlighten Prachani Parisat because Prachani Parisat is in the dynasty of the great Dhruv Maharaj. Is our dear Aditi able to read chapter 25, verses 1 and 2 translation?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I would read on our behalf, Prabhu.
Yeah.
Translation. The great sage Maitreya continued speaking to Vidura. My dear Vidura, in this way, Lord Shiva instructed the sons of King Parikshit. The sons of the king also worshipped Lord Shiva with great devotion and respect. Finally, Lord Shiva became invisible to the princess. Text 2 translation. All the Pracheta princes simply stood in the water for 10,000 years and recited the prayers given to them by Lord Shiva.
And now, Narad Muni asked Pracheni Barisad, what do you plan to achieve by doing karma? Because by doing karma, it is not possible to get rid of miseries or attain happiness. So what exactly are you trying to do? Shivangi, 3 and 4 translations, again are straightforward.
Hare Krishna, while the princes were undergoing severe austerities in the water, their father was performing different types of fruitive activities. At this time, the great sage Narada, master and teacher of all spiritual life, became very compassionate upon the king and decided to instruct him about spiritual life. Narada Muni asked King Prachinabarhisat, my dear king, what do you desire to achieve by performing these fruitive activities? The chief aim of life is to get rid of all miseries and enjoy happiness, but these two things cannot be realized by fruitive activity.
Straightforward. So then Pracheni Barisat asks Narad Muni to instruct him. And Pracheni Barisat also describes the misfortune of Grahamedis. Chandran Prabhu, 5 and 6 translations. Again, all these verses are straightforward in the first section.
Hare Krishna. Text 5. The king replied, O great soul Narada, my intelligence is entangled in fruitive activities. Therefore, I do not know the ultimate goal of life. Kindly instruct me in pure knowledge so that I can get out of the entanglement of fruitive activities. Text 6. Those who are interested only in a so-called beautiful life, namely remaining as a householder, entangled by sons and wife and searching after wealth, think that such things are life's ultimate goal. Such people simply wander in different types of bodies throughout this material existence without finding out the ultimate goal of a life. Hare Krishna.
Like the misfortune of Grahamedi is that they miss out on the ultimate goal of life. And now, to get Pracheni Barisat out of fruitive activities, by Shri Narad Muni's mystic powers, Shri Narad Muni showed to Pracheni Barisat the animals Pracheni Barisat had sacrificed. And Shri Narad Muni states that animal sacrifice is very risky. Because if one does not chant the mantra properly, then the animal does not get a new, better body. Rather, the animal is killed in the sacrifice, and that animal will come back to kill you. Mother Gita, 7-8 translation.
Text 7 translation. The great saint Narada said, O ruler of the citizens, my dear king, please see in the sky those animals which you have sacrificed without compassion and without mercy in the sacrificial arena. Text 8. All these animals are awaiting your death so that they can avenge the injuries you have inflicted upon them. After you die, they will angrily pierce your body with iron horns. Hare Krishna.
Right, so there's a great risk in animal sacrifice, or even killing anybody for tongue's taste. So part 2 is verses 9 to 24. Srila Narad Muni narrates the story of Puranjana. So we already know that this story of Puranjana is an allegory. Puranjana means one who enjoys the body. Means anyone in the material world likes to enjoy body, that person is Puranjana. Of course, here Puranjana is Prachini Bharisat. In the verses we'll read, the analogy is given, or all these characters will start coming up, that Brahat Shrava is the individual soul and Avijnanata is super soul. Avijnanata means unknowable. Uncle will read verse 9 and 10 translation.
Hare Krishna. Text 9. In this connection, I wish to narrate an old history connected with the character of a king called Puranjana. Please try to hear me with great attention. Text 10. My dear king, once in the past lived a king named Puranjana, who was celebrated for his great activities. He had a friend named Avijnanata, the unknown one. No one could understand the activities of Avijnanata.
Right? So we all have super soul as our friend, but it's very difficult to understand. So Puranjana's activities are celebrated, means soul's activities are celebrated in the material world because he has a friend, Abhikyanata or super soul. In verse number 10, Srila Prabhupada describes why the living entity does not want to leave his material body. I'm not sure about you, but I also have a lot of attachment to my body. That even though body has so many miseries, but none of us want to leave the body. And Prabhupada explains the reason why. Uncle will read verse 10 purport.
Hare Krishna. Text 10 purport. Every living entity is Puranjana. The word Puram means within this body, within this form, and Jnana means living entity. Thus, everyone is Puranjana. Every living entity is supposed to be the king of his body because the living entity is given full freedom to use his body as he likes. He usually engages his body for sense gratification because one who is in bodily concept of life feels that the ultimate goal of life is to serve the senses. This is the process of karma kanda. One who has no inner knowledge, who does not know that he is actually the spirit soul living within this body, who is simply enamored by dictation of the senses, is called a materialist. A materialistic person interested in sense gratification can be called a Puranjana because such a materialistic person utilizes his senses according to his whims. He may also be called a king. An irresponsible king takes the royal position to be his personal property and misuses his treasury for sense gratification. The word Brahacharva is also significant. The word Srava means fame. The living entity is famous from ancient times. For as stated in Bhagavad Gita 2.20, Na Jayate Mriyate, the living entity is never born and never dies because he is eternal. His activities are eternal. Although they are purified in different types of bodies, na hanayate anyam mane satte. He does not die, even after the annihilation of the body. Thus, the living entity transmigrates from the body to another and performs various activities. In each body, the living entity performs so many acts. Sometimes he becomes a great hero, just like Hiranyakasipu and Kamsa, or in the modern age, Napoleon or Hitler. The activities of such men are certainly very great, but as soon as their bodies are finished, everything else is finished. They then remain in name only. Therefore, the living entity may be called Brahacharva. He may have a great reputation for various types of activities. Nonetheless, he has a friend whom he does not know. Materialistic persons do not understand that God is present as the super soul, who is situated within the heart of every living entity. Although the Paramatma sits beside the Jivatma as a friend, the Jivatma, the living entity, does not know it. Consequently, he is described avijnana saha, meaning one who has unknown friend. The word avijnanata sisthita is also significant because a living entity works hard under the direction of the Paramatma and he is carried away by the laws of nature. Nonetheless, he thinks himself independent of God and independent of the stringent laws of material nature. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita 2.24. Achaito yama adeo yam akleyo shosya yivacha nitya sarva gata statadu akalo yam Sanatana, this individual soul is unbreakable and insoluble and can be neither burnt nor dried. He is everlasting, all pervading, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. The living entity is Sanatana, eternal, because he cannot be killed by any weapon, burnt into ashes by fire, soaked or moistened by water, nor dried up by air. He is considered to be immune to material relations. Although he is changing bodies, he is not affected by the material conditions. He is placed under the material conditions and he acts according to the directions of his friend, the super soul, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 15.5. Sarveshya Cham Hadris Sana Vishito Mata Smrita Jnanam Apo Jnana Cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Thus, the Lord, as a Paramatma, is situated in everyone's heart, and he gives directions to the living entity to act in whatever way living entity desires. In this life and in his previous lives, the living entity does not know that the Lord is giving him a chance to fulfill all kinds of desires. No one can fulfill any desire without the sanction of the Lord. All the facilities are given by the Lord are unknown to the conditioned soul. Hare Krishna.
Questions, comments, realizations? Everybody in the material world is Puranjana.
This is a realization, Prabhuji. That how we love our body,
Yeah.
not knowing it is temporary. The name and fame goes with the body. Only the name remains. Yeah, amazing, amazing revelation.
Right. That's why nobody wants to leave the body. The living entity is engaged in so many activities and is attached to the name and fame. And he thinks, I am this body. I don't want to leave. Very good.
Prabhuji, before we go further, I want to I wish to seek a clarification. This allegory is a way of teaching the deep truth what we are learning now by using stories and which are fictional, but the message goes to the individual. So why allegory is given with the fictional? Why not direct? It is indirect, isn't it?
Yeah, we already read this in chapter 28, verse 65, the very first paragraph in the purport. Prabhupada says that direct bhakti yoga process is to hear the pastimes of the Lord, but those who are not interested in hearing the pastimes of the Lord because they are so attached to wanting to live in the material world and enjoy. So if you tell them directly that you are doing so and so wrong, well, they will immediately get defensive and they will stop hearing. So where's the question of completing the story? They will stop hearing as soon as you tell them the very first line that you are wasting your time in the human form of life by engaging in sense gratification. They will say, I don't want to hear from you. But this story form that once upon a time there was a king named Puranjana. So these materialistic people, they anyway like to hear stories in the material world. So they are kind of getting somewhat interested to hear. And some get the benefit, not all. Those who hear, and Prachani Barisat will actually go on to ask Narad Muni, I don't understand what you're telling me this story. And that's when Narad Muni will say, well, Puranjana does not exist. It's actually you. Right. So it's this allegorical way of teaching is for those who are not directly prepared by themselves voluntarily to hear the pastimes of the Lord.
It is a process of introspection, gives an opportunity for introspection.
Correct.
And at the same time, one by realization validates himself versus the story of Puranjana.
Yeah, you are correct. So you yourself said few minutes ago when we read, everybody in the material world is Puranjana. Right? And nobody wants to leave the material body. It's a fact. But still, even after reading this today, after we finish this session, we are back to our regular routine of how we were wanting to act in the body. So it takes time for purification also, right? Shivangi?
I just want to say, Prabhuji, I think it's a credit to Narad Muni. He has different kinds of students, and I think he teaches everybody in an impactful way. Personally, I think this indirect way of how he's doing the story, I think it's nice because, like you said, sometimes people can't directly hear the truth. It leaves a bitter taste, in the mouth. So I think this is very creative. So
Yeah, very good. Yeah, and very good realization that Narad Muni has done so many teachings throughout Bhagavatam, and all are very important. Narad Muni comes so many places in Bhagavatam. Like from the start, there is all cantos. Every place he's teaching so many points in a real impactful manner. The proper word Shivangi used, impactful teaching. Very good. Rest of you, questions, comments, realizations?
Prabhuji, in a nutshell, an allegory is a symbolic story used to communicate or convey deep moral and spiritual truth beyond its literal meaning.
Correct. Absolutely correct. So all these characters, all these names we'll soon read. A lot of them will come up in all the 4 chapters. They all don't exist. They are just to represent something else. And soon these, from verse 14 also, few of these points will come up as the aspects of a city. They actually represent different parts of our body, which we don't realize. But the whole unit 19 is having these fictional characters with an impact.
One more realization, Prabhuji. Can I go ahead?
Yeah.
We are deeply absorbed in our bodily concept, ritualistic and material life.
Yeah.
Though through this allegory narrative, the listener recognizes his own condition without feeling accused.
Correct.
And there is no resistance.
Well,
self-realization.
Yeah, you are absolutely correct. So about this ritualistic also, this also will come up, exactly what Prachani Barisat was also performing rituals. And Narad Muni says this is a waste of time. And we don't realize unless we hear this very impactful way. Yeah, the Bhagavatam and Narad Muni's teachings, they touch upon you all, we all, so that we can transform. So that's the action item for us, that when we hear all these points, then we should learn to transform. That's when this will become relishable. So we have discussed from the start of Bhagavatam. Relishable means what I can apply from each chapter or in my day-to-day life so that I can transform. So there are a lot of points, and soon we will hear about the description of the city of 9 gates, which basically is our body, and then Puranjana getting attracted to a female Puranjini, and we will realize, well, we are no different, or many people in the material world are no different. How boys and girls get attracted. That's exactly what is described in this chapter. That how Grahamedis or normal people, how they are wasting their life. Uncle, everybody.
Got it, Prabhuji.
Very good. So now the living entity tries to search for a suitable place to live happily in the material world, but he cannot find such a place. Mother Chandra Aunty, 11 and 12 translation.
Next 11. King Puranjana began to search for a suitable place to live, and thus he traveled all over the world. Even after a great deal of traveling, he could not find a place just to his liking. Finally, he became morose and disappointed. Text 12. King Puranjana had unlimited desires for sense enjoyment. Consequently, he traveled all over the world to find a place where all his desires could be fulfilled. Unfortunately, he found a feeling of insufficiency everywhere. Hare Krishna.
Right. The soul is trying to be happy in the material world, but it is not possible. He is not able to find a place where he can find happiness because it does not exist. And now from these verses, the body is compared to the city of 9 gates. In Bhagavad Gita, we have studied this body of 9 gates, and each part of the body or each part of the city is compared to a part of the body. So we'll read 2 verses at a time, and then we'll have a comparative chart for all these points. Kalyani or Sridhar Prabhu, 13 and 14 translations.
Hare Krishna. 13. Once, while wandering in this way, he saw on the southern side of the Himalayas, in a place named Bharatavarsha, India, a city that had 9 gates all about and was characterized by all auspicious facilities. Text 14. That city was surrounded by walls and parks, and within it were towers, canals, windows, and outlets. The houses there were decorated with domes made of gold, silver, and iron. Hare Krishna.
So you can make a comparative chart that one column is aspects of the city and the other column is comparison with our body. So walls are compared to skin. Parks are compared to hair. Towers are compared to highest parts in our body like the nose and the head. Trenches or canals are compared to wrinkles and depressions in the body. Windows are compared to eyes. Gates are eyelids. Houses with gold, silver, and iron domes, they are compared to the 3 dhutas our body is made up of: mucus, bile, and air. Shivangi, 1516 translation.
Hare Krishna, text 15. The floors of the houses in that city were made of sapphire, crystal, diamonds, pearls, emeralds, and rubies. Because of the luster of the houses in the capital, the city was compared to the celestial town named Bhogavati. In that city, there were many assembly houses, street crossings, streets, restaurants, gambling houses, markets, resting places, flags, festoons, and beautiful parks. All these surrounded the city.
So capital of the state is compared to our heart. Floors made of sapphire, crystal, diamonds, pearls, emeralds, rubies is compared to the various desires and plans for material enjoyment. Assembly house, so that is the heart, the center of all remembrance, forgetfulness, and deliberation. Street crossings is compared to a place below the palate where passages for mouth, nose, eyes, and ears meet. Flags and festoons are palms and soles of feet. Streets are shushumna, or something that running down the spine, like whatever connection we have, running down the spine. The gambling houses are the gross location of the senses. Market is the gross mind. And resting places is chitta. Chandran Prabhu, 17 to 19 translation.
Hare Krishna. Text 17. On the outskirts of the city were many beautiful trees and creepers encircling a nice lake. Also surrounding the lake were many groups of birds and bees that were always chanting and humming. Text 18. The branches of the trees standing on the bank of the lake received particles of water carried by the spring air from the falls coming down from the city, from the icy mountain. Hare Krishna.
So beautiful trees, creepers, encircling nice lake, the group of birds and bees that are chanting and humming are compared to favorable conditions surrounding the sex impulse. Wind, waterfall, and spring air, they are compared to the different types of rasa or smell. Non-violent animals are compared to no sinful reactions due to pious results. And then cuckoos attracting travelers to rest in the nice garden is compared to persons dividing their enjoyment amongst family members, friends, and guests. Everybody with me? Questions, comments, realizations on the comparison? All right. So here's another important point in one of the purport. Verse 17 purport describes what roles do the subtle body and the gross body play in material enjoyment. That at the time of death, thoughts of material enjoyment, they do not go away. This indicates that the living entity, the soul, is carried by the subtle body of mind, intelligence, and ego, and that enjoying mentality gets continued in the next life, because the mind, intelligence, and ego carry that enjoying mentality. And Prabhupada explains that, we'll soon read the purport. Prabhupada explains that just because somebody dies does not mean material enjoyment finishes. You just continue the material enjoyment in your subtle body, and it continues in the next life. Chandran Prabhu, 17 purport.
Hare Krishna. Purport 17. Since the body is a great city, there must be various arrangements such as lakes and gardens for sense enjoyment. Of the various parts of the body, those which incite sexual impulses are referred to here indirectly, because of the body has genitals. When the living entity attains the right age, be he man or woman, he becomes agitated by the sex impulse. As long as one remains a child, he is not agitated by seeing a beautiful woman, although the sense organs are present. Unless the age is right, there is no sex impulse. The favorable conditions surrounding the sex impulse are compared here to a garden or a nice solitary park. When one sees the opposite sex, naturally the sex impulse increases. It is said that if a man in a solitary place does not become agitated upon seeing a woman is to be considered a brahmachari. But this practice is almost impossible. The sex impulse is so strong that even by seeing, touching, or talking, coming in contact with, or even thinking of the opposite sex, even in so many subtle ways, one becomes sexually impelled. Consequently, a brahmachari or sannyasi is prohibited to associate with women, especially in a secret place. The Shastras enjoin that one should not even talk to a woman in a secret place, even if she happens to be one's own daughter, sister, or mother. The sex impulse is so strong that even if one is very learned, he becomes agitated in such circumstances. If this is the case, how can a young man in a nice park remain calm and quiet after seeing a beautiful young woman? Hare Krishna.
Right, so at the time of death, the thoughts of material enjoyment, they do not go away. The living entity, the soul, is carried by the subtle body, mind, intelligence, and ego to the next body. And he just continues his material enjoyment in the next body. So this transmigration of the subtle body is not visible to material eyes. Therefore, when one gives up the gross body, people think that he is finished, everything is finished. Prabhupada clearly says that's not correct. The plans for material enjoyment are made by the subtle body, and the gross body is the instrument for enjoying the plans. But then, upon death, the enjoyment continues to stay in the subtle body and is get transferred to the next body. Therefore, we need to learn to purify our desires while we are in this body before death. Otherwise, we'll just continue our existence life after life after life. Questions, comments, realizations?
What about this is one aspect, material enjoyment. Spiritual enjoyment also is carried, Prabhuji.
You are correct. We have read multiple times Bhagavad Gita chapter 2 verse number 40 as well as chapter 6 verse number 40. Both these verses Srila Prabhu had pointed out long time ago when he was here in Toronto, these two verses in one of our classes, that spiritual credits you do not lose. You continue in your next life from wherever you left off. The material opulences you do not carry. You lose the material opulences. But it's the spiritual credits that you do not lose. You continue in your next life. Uncle?
Thank you, Prabhuji.
So now verses 20 to 24. Puranjana meets a beautiful woman, Puranjini. Just as young boys and girls meet. And again, you can make a 2-column chart that the aspects of Puranjini represent something else. So we'll read one verse at a time and we'll try to populate 2-column chart. Mother Jija 20 translation.
Text 20. While wandering here and there in that wonderful garden, King Puranjana suddenly came in contact with a very beautiful woman who was walking there without any engagement. She had 10 servants with her, and each servant had hundreds of wives accompanying him. Hare Krishna.
So you can again make two columns. On the left is aspects of Puranjini and the right is what does it represent. So Puranjini represents intelligence functioning with ignorance. And another aspect is arrived on her own. And this represents that the initial relationship of the jiva with material intelligence arises without cause. And soon we'll read a verse where Prabhupada explains this material intelligence is actually ignorance. We'll soon read. Of course, we have discussed this in Sri Upanishad mantras 9, 10, and 11, where ignorance of the material world as well as knowledge of the material world are both considered as ignorance. In comparison, spiritual knowledge is considered as real knowledge. So, the aspects of Puranjini saying 10 servants with hundreds of wives, this represents our 10 senses with many, many desires. Everybody understands what we are doing, following? Silence, I got silence.
It's clear, Prabhuji.
All right, thank you. Uncle will read
One
21.
request.
Yeah.
The phase in which you are communicating, little slow we need because we are not able to cope with the speed in which you dictate.
Yeah, I'll go slow. You can get the recording to get caught up or whatever you missed. Sorry.
Okay.
Uncle will read 21 translation.
Hare Krishna, text 21 translation. The woman was protected on all sides of white-hooded snake. She was very beautiful and young, and she appeared very anxious to find a suitable husband.
So the aspect of Puranjani, protected by 5-hooded snake. This represents vital life force or prana. Then beautiful and young, she appeared anxious to find a suitable husband. This represents intelligence cannot act without consciousness. Mother Chandranti, 22 translation.
Text 22. A woman's nose, teeth, and forehead were all very beautiful. Her ears were equally very beautiful and were bucked with dazzling earrings. Hare Krishna.
So, beautifully decorated face represents ways of acquiring knowledge. Beautiful nose represents knowledge of smell. Beautiful teeth represents ability to taste flavors and chew. Beautiful forehead represents clarity of intelligence. Beautiful ears and dazzling earrings represents ability to understand meaning of scriptures concerning enjoyment and liberation. Sridhar Prabhu, 23 translation.
The waist, the waist and hips of the woman were very beautiful. She was dressed in a yellow sari with a golden belt. While she walked, her ankle bells rang. She appeared exactly like a denizen of the heavens. Hare Krishna.
The dark in complexion represents intelligence covers the Lord or the Jiva. Dressed in yellow sari and gold belt represents intelligence covered by actions in passion. Two feet jingling with ankle bells represent intelligence unsteady in hearing scriptures. Shivangi, 24.
Text 24, Hare Krishna. With the end of her sari, the woman was trying to cover her breasts, which were equally round and well placed side by side. She again and again tried to cover them out of shyness while she walked exactly like a great elephant.
So the two breasts, they represent raga and dvesha. Youthful represents raga and dvesha are always young. Raga means attachment. Dvesha means aversion. Round with no space in between represents equally bewildering. She tried to hide them with the end of her cloth out of shyness. This represents cultured people try to hide raga and dvesha. Questions, comments, realizations? Right. So from verse 25 is next part. So we'll cover it in our next class. I will right now give you spiritual endeavor question. First, explain why the living entity does not want to leave his material body. comes from verse 10. Number 2, what roles do the subtle and gross bodies play in material enjoyment? Comes from verse 17. So if you have not already read chapter 25, the rest of it you can please read for our next class. Now, look up on the screen. Shivangi and Chandran Prabhus are already familiar with this from the other batch. So from today, what I will do is I will send you a link which will take you to this Google form where you will populate striking points and inquiries from today's class. So the Google form is listed at class number. So our in sequence, our class number is 160 today. And you put your email address, so you will get a copy of this form, filled form in your email. And sometimes I will edit your response so you can do a manual comparison. Although the name is like a mandatory field, but if you choose, you can stay anonymous by putting any character in the name and last name. Say sometimes some devotees, they have a difficult question to ask, so they stay anonymous. That's okay. I don't need to know. So we don't get, since our class has, the length of the class has shrunk because of time conflict and devotees across various time zones. So we generally don't get time to discuss the striking points and sometimes also inquiries. So if you put the striking points and inquiries on this form, at the next class, I can try to answer the inquiries as well as all the striking points from all devotees I will have on a slide. You can take a snapshot. So instead of we discussing the striking points in class, here devotees are providing the striking points on the Google form, which I will at the subsequent class bring up on a screen on a slide. And you can just take a snapshot and read by yourself. I'm kind of trying to use an efficient way to still be able to provide the striking points and inquiries. I mean, the questions that I give you as your spiritual endeavor, you can also put the answers to those questions in these striking points. Nothing wrong with that also. Because generally, we are kind of always running short of time ever since we have shrunk our length of the class. So Shivangi and Chandran Prabhus are already aware with this process in the other batches. If they would like to share something on these.
I don't usually put the homework answers on the form. I do them, but I keep them separate.
Yeah, that's okay. It's an option. You can put that also. Doesn't hurt you.
Okay. But yeah, it's a nice way to collect answers from everybody, Prabhuji.
Okay. Everybody okay with the plan?
Yes, Prabhuji.
So you try to complete the spiritual endeavor by end of day Wednesday. So that gives me enough time to assemble the information, although as soon as is possible is better instead of waiting till end of day Wednesday. You still have at least tomorrow, Sunday, as the day off. You can just try to complete rather than waiting for the week to start when you know that from Monday onwards is going to become crazy, why wait? Just finish as soon as is possible. So I'll post this link in the WhatsApp group, and you can follow. Any questions, comments, realizations before we stop for the day? All right, we are just getting close to 12 noon Toronto time. We'll stop here. Hare Krishna, everybody.
Thank you,
Krishna,
Prabhuji.
Prabhuji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.